Welcome to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Ralph Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. Speaking of power, we have a powerful show for you today. We start out talking about what's happening inside the Beltway in our nation's capital and the difference between policy and politics and why that matters to everyone. In the next segment, following that one, we touch base on a special program in Michigan that both Democrats and Republicans at the state level support that's saving lives and saving taxpayer dollars. There's a ray of hope here, people. Following that segment, we look at what's happening with healthcare and immigration policy in America and what you can do. And then we close the show taking a look at the negative consequences of Donald Trump defunding the Department of Education. We're going to jump right in with our first guest. Welcome back to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Rao Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. We have one of my very favorite leaders on today, Jocelyn Fry of the National Partnership of Women and Families, and she's going to explain to us what the noodle is going on in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Jocelyn.
Well, thank you, Kristen. I don't know if I can explain the nonsense that's going on in DC, but it's always good to be in conversation with you.
You have been working in democracy. I'm going to call it democracy, not politics.
Yes.
You've been working in public policy. You've been working in building a country that works for everyone, where everyone's contributions and needs are taken into consideration when policy is pushed forward for a long time. And somehow we are in the weirdest political situation I have ever seen in my 900 years of working in this area. And I don't even know how to explain it to people, but one of the things I've been thinking about is that there is a difference between lower P policy and capital P politics, and that somehow people have mixed the two up, and we've got chaos in our headlines. We've got Donald Trump and Republican leaders undermining programs that Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians, people across the country actually support, need, and use. For example, Medicaid, the majority of people on Medicaid are actually Republicans. So what is your take about maybe this mixing up of lower P policy and capital P politics and just sort of those things crashing into each other where it doesn't make sense at all right now?
Well, it doesn't make sense because it's nonsensical, and so I think we should start there. You can't make sense of things that simply don't make sense. I think your point about politics versus policy is an accurate one. The only thing I would add is that I don't think it's really substantively about meaningful policy at all. I think there is a political agenda that's driving a lot of the engagement in Congress, period, the end. So we have a crazy bill that they passed, a reconciliation bill over the summer. That's just an irresponsible bill that was passed in spite of sound policy. And it was very much about politics. And so I think we're in this mess at the moment, including a government that's not functioning largely for political reasons, notwithstanding the serious policy consequences of their failure to act responsibly. So I think it's one of those situations where it doesn't make sense because it's not sensible. And the people who are most being harmed are regular folks on the ground who are caught in the middle of a uh, politically charged, driven drama where they don't actually have an end game. And it's messy because it looks messy because it is messy. And we need sort of sounder heads to prevail.
Yeah, I mean, and that is the question, when and if sounder heads will prevail. I personally was shocked, just totally shocked that Donald Trump pushed out an AI image of himself with a crown flying a fighter jet. This is fake, you all. This is not real. This is AI generated. Donald Trump does not know how to fly a fighter jet. I'm just saying that. Flying a fighter jet and dropping poop on people who were using their First Amendment right to freedom of speech. What The heck? I couldn't even believe it. And this is happening at the same time as Republicans have shut down the government, completely shut down the government, because they are proposing to increase Affordable Care Act costs by as much as 70% for people who are enrolled. Now, listeners, I got to set the stage for this. When we look at who that would impact, more than 3 in 4 ACA marketplace enrollees live in states that President Trump actually won in the 2024 election. This is negatively impacting the most people who voted for Trump. And I'm not sure, Jocelyn, in this moment where we have these bizarre AI generated images that are just insulting, do we get out the real information that no, Donald Trump is not dumping poop literally on people. He's dumping you off of your healthcare if you voted for him. What are your thoughts on how to get out real information?
Yeah, I think it's a great question and a great point. I think there are a couple things. First of all, um, he's not a serious president, right? Like
Yes,
he's a
that part.
president who's driven by his own narcissism and idiosyncratic needs and sort of personal politics. And putting aside whether, he can think what he wants, but I think obviously no serious politician, certainly no serious leader who's trying to actually run a government and um, implement sound policy would circulate an AI generated anything, let alone something like that. So, I think our task is to not be distracted by things that are simply not serious and childish, and get drawn into sort of something at that level. I think it is also an effort to normalize behavior that simply has no place amongst serious political leaders who are supposed to be governing. So that's the first broad point. I think what's clear is that it is the impact, potential impact of the rise in healthcare premium costs is breaking through. It's part of the reason that he does send around distracting images to try to counter the uproar that whether it's people marching on last Saturday across the country in every single state, or whether it is just simply people in jurisdictions across the country saying, I don't want my healthcare premiums to rise, what all of those places, people are beginning to hear that message. And I think it is a reminder that um, um, we don't really have time for political games. At the end of the day, they passed a bill where, quite honestly, I don't even think they really understood what it did. And so now we are dealing with the policy consequences. And to the extent they understood it, I think they believe they put it off for at least to the end of the year, not fully understanding that the way insurance premiums work and the rate setting work would have people hear now about how those costs are rising. So I think it's important for people to pay attention, but I think they are. And because they are, I think it is important for people to make clear that these sorts of changes are unacceptable, and that at the end of the day, people, regardless of political affiliation, they want Congress to do their job. They've been barely working since July. It's ridiculous. The rest of us would be fired. Like if we just
100%.
we would be fired. But instead, they are, largely not working, particularly the House, largely for political reasons related to Epstein files and things of that nature. And the people who are paying the price are the folks who are literally working for the government without pay, or they're at home, and the people who rely on those services, and now the outsized effects of that crazy bill that is going to lead to exorbitant costs for folks who need their healthcare insurance, right? And so I think, for anybody across the country who cares about that, it is critical that they tell their members, get back to work.
Yeah.
and actually fix problems for families rather than engage in political games. That people have very little use for that. It's a waste of everybody's time.
150% agree with you as always. You mentioned a little bit about the Epstein files playing a role in why the US House of Representatives, which is led by Republicans, so their schedule is set by Republicans, just to be clear, has left the building, literally left the building. Can you share a little bit about how the Epstein files relate to what's happening right now?
Sure. I mean, I think if the information that we all hear is correct, there are files about Epstein and all of his incredibly horrific shenanigans is not quite the right word because it makes it sound a little too cute. I mean, these are horrific crimes that he engaged in. Jeffrey Epstein, who was a pedophile, a sex trafficker, amongst other things. And I think there are substantial files that the Department of Justice has that they have not released. And Congress, particularly the House, is poised to vote to have these files released, and is, one vote shy of what is needed to effectuate what's called a discharge petition that will require the release of these files. So we've already had an instance of the House essentially recessing and going on vacation this summer because they were close to potentially having that type of a vote, and the Speaker apparently didn't want to have the vote. And now, fast forward to where we are, we have a new member of Congress who's ready to be sworn in, who he refuses to swear in part because once he does so, she will represent the 218th vote, I believe it is, to actually move this discharge petition forward. And so, I think what I would say about it is just release the files. Eventually, the files are going to be released, and their insistence of delay, distract, actually just makes it sort of more curious and makes more people want to look at them. And I think, quite frankly, survivors have a right to see what's available in that information. And the administration itself sort of fed that narrative when it was convenient during the campaign and now wants to backtrack when perhaps there is information in those files that is politically embarrassing. But I think it is irresponsible, regardless of how you feel about those files or what's in them. It's simply irresponsible to um, have the government not function because you want to avoid a vote. It's just silly. And the fact that they have shut the house down literally and made them, absent from DC, as running away as if they're hiding in a corner, is irresponsible when people are in dire need of Congress acting. And it was one thing in the summer when the consequences weren't so high, but now at this moment, it's even higher. Right? The government is shut down. People are waiting to be paid. People need those services. And people's costs are going to increase solely because the House is scared to come into session and potentially have something that apparently could be politically embarrassing for the president. But quite frankly, as you pointed out, if he's going to send an AI image of him with a crown pooping on a group of people, like, and he's already done embarrassing things. Like, I mean, like that's like the least of our problems. That's his problem. People need their health care covered.
100%. It is a astonishingly bad situation. So we hope that everybody who's listening calls their member of Congress and says, "Get back to work, please, in Washington, D.C., and protect our healthcare. Stop the cuts. Protect people, not AI." I mean, like, what the heck? What message would you give in the last 5 seconds?
I would say just do what Kristen says. You know, They need to get back to work. It's really critically important, and the American people deserve better than what they're getting.
Agree, agree. Thank you so much for being on, Jocelyn. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Kristen. Always happy to do whatever you ask me to do.
Same, same, same. Thank you.
All right.
We're going to take a quick break. Thanks so much for sticking around. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Raufinkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. We are joined by a guest you're going to love, love, love hearing from, Dr. Mona Hanna, who's director of RX Kids and who is also with Michigan State University. And I'm so excited that you're here. Welcome, 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 Dr. Mona.
Kristen, I am so excited to be here with all of you and all the listeners and everybody. This is going to be amazing.
I'm really excited because I've heard from so many people about the recent research and studies showing the incredible impact of RX Kids on moms, on babies in Michigan. And by incredible impact, I mean incredible positive impact, you all. Lately, sometimes when you hear incredible impact, it's doom, but no, this is good news. Can you share a little bit about the background of the good news and what is the good news?
Oh, I'm so excited to share. So ARCS Kids is this bright spot right now. It is happy, it is love, it is joy, it is a solution. And it is a nation's first. So we decided to no longer shrug our shoulders and be okay with babies being born into poverty. And we decided to do something about it. And we decided to do something that was bold and large scale, not a tiny little pilot or research study. We decided to eliminate poverty for moms and babies for entire communities. So that's what RX Kids is. We call it a prescription for health, hope, and opportunity. And everybody in an RX Kids community gets, every pregnant mother gets $1,500 in mid-pregnancy. And then once the baby's born, it's $500 a month for either 6 months or 12 months, depending on the community. So you all know out there that it is expensive to have a baby. And this is actually the time of life when families are the poorest, the maternal infant window. So rather than once again be okay with that pathogen of poverty that makes kids sick and it impacts their entire life course, we are eliminating perinatal poverty. And with that, we are seeing incredible downstream effects, improved health, better birth outcomes, less evictions, more nutrition security, less postpartum depression, improved maternal mental health, less stress. The list goes on of the incredible outcomes that we're already finding.
And I saw some of the incredible outcomes. People, these are incredibly positive. 18% drop in preterm births, 27% reduction in low birth weight, and 29% reduction in NICU admissions. So when we're looking at when we give people an opportunity to build good lives, to create healthy lives for themselves and their children, then yes, that opportunity is taken up and we see incredibly positive results.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we all want to know is, how can this be expanded out? We have the child tax credit, which Republicans just cut back, wasn't as much funding, but was showing significant increases in people being able to go to work, build good lives, contribute to their communities. So what ways can we make this policy everywhere for everyone?
Well, that is our goal, Kristen. We started this in Flint and we started this in Michigan, but it was never about one city or one state. It was about doing this for the entire country. And all of this work is really kind of inspired by global evidence, child cash transfers, maternal health bonuses, paid leave. These are things that are done across the world. 70% of countries have some sort of child allowance. And then we did it as a nation during the expanded child tax credit. We lowered child poverty to its lowest level, and all these amazing outcomes came because of that. But that was not renewed by one vote. So that was actually also one of the inspirations for this program, to keep this work in the public imagination at a scale that hasn't been done before to inform policy. And the really neat thing about what we've done with our kids in Michigan and really across the nation, where we're talking to so many of our states, it is bipartisan supported. We just got an amazing $270 million in the Michigan budget that was just signed about a week and a half ago. And it was a bipartisan legislature because fundamentally, everybody cares about babies. This is something that is super efficient. It's actually, it's a public-private partnership. We're not growing government. We have amazing outcomes. We have an acute return on investment. It's an economic stimulus to local economies. So all of these partners are like, hey, we need to provide relief Families are struggling with housing and childcare and the price of eggs and, buying a crib. And here's one simple intervention, one simple program that is plug and play, that is solving all of these poly crises that states are facing. So we would love to continue expanding this program to other states and eventually become a national program.
I 150% agree. I want to uplift something that you said that I think is really important. This policy in Michigan has bipartisan state level support. We know from polls, we know from listening to our members, we know from listening to voters and people that obviously Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Green Party, people of all political persuasions have babies, and it is expensive. And their parents are facing rising costs, and they're facing cut healthcare across the political spectrum too. So we know right now that we have Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Libertarians, all of the people, all of the parents across parties supporting policies like this one, as well as paid family medical leave, childcare, earned sick days, and more. Yet in Washington, D.C. right now, the Republican leadership is out of step with their own constituents. Instead of expanding people's ability to build good lives, they are contracting it with these extreme cuts to things like healthcare, just access to healthcare. Just cut 17 million people off Medicaid. And we actually have a government shutdown right now because 24 million people are in danger of having their ACA costs rise as much as 70%, which is ridiculous. So how do we deal with this difference between the beautiful, I will say beautiful, actually beautiful, bipartisan work happening in many states, including Michigan, and the absolute lack of being able to, represent their constituents adequately by Republican leadership inside the Beltway in Congress?
Yeah, I think, right now, a lot of the solutions are happening at the local state levels. And that's where we're seeing a lot of creativity, a lot of kind of filling in gaps in imagination. We're seeing a lot of, innovative ways to support folks, especially during these times with increased federal cuts. And I think if we can continue to build that momentum and maybe build a state by state strategy. So right now, in a couple weeks, Kristen, I'm going to be in Mississippi. I was invited by the Republican legislature to testify about ARC's kids in light of their public health emergency because of rising infant mortality rates. And they see this as a solution. I think we have an opportunity here, especially in light of what's happening federally, to do some really creative, awesome things that are working and prove that they're working in a very bipartisan way in states to get to that one day point in time where we can do this at a national level.
It's so important. And one of the things that you mentioned that I want to uplift too is how this helps protect our economy. A lot of people are like, I don't like this. It's going to hurt the economy. Wrong. Buzzer sound loud. This is not what happens when we have programs that allow people to build good lives. It allows people to actually go to work. It allows businesses to have us spending money. It allows lots of things. So from your perspective, how does this help our economy?
Oh my goodness, yes. So we actually have 2 reports now on the economic stimulus impact of this program. So when you can think of it like a trickle up program. When you give dollars, direct support to mothers, to families, it's going to be by and large spent locally in small businesses, in childcare, for landlords, at the grocery store, buying diapers, the list goes on. And that will create more jobs in the economy. Then the landlord needs to hire a property manager, and the childcare place needs to hire more workers. So we actually, our Flint Chamber of Commerce released a report that estimates every dollar that is given to families, there's a minimum $1.6, $1.60 as a multiplier. And that could be up to $3 as a multiplier. So we are seeing that impact. And that's why we also have leveraged bipartisan support, because of that economic development angle. I would also say, so often as a pediatrician, I talk about long-term cost savings when it comes to kids. Oh, they're going to have increased economic, if we invest in kids now, they'll do better in school later and have increased economic productivity and less healthcare costs. But what we are seeing with this program is today healthcare cost savings. For example, you mentioned those population level improvements in birth outcomes. At a population level, we have less preterm babies. We have less low birth weight babies. We have less babies that needed to be admitted to the NICU. And that is translating into immediate cost savings and by and large to Medicaid. And we're also seeing less involvement in the child welfare system, which is also a big chunk of states' budget. So these are things that are translating to immediate cost savings for taxpayers, and it's also putting in a lot of dollars into local economies.
It's so important to talk about the economic boost too, because it boosts our health. It
Yes.
boosts our economy. It boosts our local businesses as we're able to spend money on baby food, on baby clothes, on, babies grow, you all.
Diapers.
Diapers
The
are so
number one thing
expensive.
folks spend money on in this program is diapers.
Yeah, and one thing that people don't realize is that for better or worse, our economy, our GDP is 72% based on consumer spending, and women and moms make the majority of those consumer spending decisions. So when we don't have money, it actually trickles out to a domino effect of the local businesses not getting money, or our business too. So when we see programs like this, on the whole, programs like this, programs like SNAP, programs like WIC, what happens is those become immediate economic stimuluses because people are not putting them in the bank, shoving them away for, a rainy day and 500 years that may never come, and having them be investments. This money goes immediately out to stimulate the economy. What do you think it's going to take to frame the national conversation around policies like this as economic boosters?
Yeah, I would say one more thing about the economic stimulus is the neat thing about ARC's kids is we're trusting families and empowering them to decide how to best meet their needs. It's not like SNAP or WIC that can only be used on, for example, food or a childcare subsidy. This is giving families freedom and choice to decide how best to meet their needs. Some folks need help with rent. Some folks need help paying for diapers. Some folks need help with food, and some folks need help paying tuition so they can, go back to school. So the flexibility also allows us to kind of meet lots of different needs. There's a lot of momentum and support around babies. President Trump was talking about a $5,000 baby bonus. Vice President Harris, during her campaign, had a $6,000 newborn credit, which was inspired by our program, the postnatal payments. So there is bipartisan support. So I think if we continue to hold up our babies, hold up what is best for them, continue to share the evidence and the stories, continue to do awesome podcasts like this with you, Kristen, we can continue to build the momentum for programs like this, which are working and which have so many benefits.
What can people do who are listening are like, yes, 1,000 times yes, and want to help?
Go to arcskids.org. We have a webpage about how to bring this to your community. Or if you want to contribute, we're a public-private partnership. We will gladly take all donations to complement our public dollars to make this possible for more communities.
And what's giving you hope in this interesting time of political chaos? I'm going to call it that.
I'm still a practicing pediatrician, and I'm in clinic in a few hours. And whenever I'm holding a newborn, whenever I'm holding a baby, there is no better definition of hope than our babies. And they give me hope, because when I'm holding a newborn and that baby's staring me down, it is demanding that we do better. So I am kind of, I took an oath to protect these babies and make sure that they have the brightest future possible. But, collectively, implicitly, all of us as a society have taken that oath for our kiddos. So that's what gives me hope. It gives me hope that we have been already so successful with the program. We've made tremendous impact, and that it continues to gain momentum.
Yeah. And as we're looking at this, you've talked about going to one other state. How many states are you talking to that are like, ooh, this is intriguing?
We're talking to lots of states, and we're happy to talk to even more states. So we've talked to folks in Mississippi and Tennessee and Arkansas and Alaska and Hawaii and Oregon and New Mexico and Washington State and Maryland, and the list goes on. So we're happy to talk to any state that is interested. We have been able to use a blend of state funds for TANF dollars, as well as general fund dollars, philanthropic dollars. So there's lots of ways to bring this program. It's plug and play. It's administered by the international leader in cash transfers, Give Directly. So with dollars at the table, we can go anywhere.
I love that. Can you share that website again?
rxkids.org.
rxkids.org. Everyone, please go to rxkids.org. Get inspired. This is part of programs that are actually working for us right now with local bipartisan support. Look at the hope that we can build for tomorrow. This is what is possible. Lifting health access, lifting actual health outcomes, lifting our economy, lifting moms, parents, and kids. All of these things can happen as we save taxpayer dollars. So this is Hope in Motion, you all. Thank you so much for being on. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you
I'm so excited to be with you, Dr. Mona Hanna. Thank you.
so much.
We're going to take a short break. We're going to be back to talk about healthcare policy in just a second. Welcome back to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Rao Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. We have a super spectacular, wonderful, awesome guest rejoining us today, Donna Norton of Moms Rising. Welcome, Donna.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to talk to you about some current events and to get your take, because we haven't had time to get each other's take on this. One thing that has been bugging me, and I bet is bugging you too, is that President Trump is taking a literal wrecking ball, like an actual wrecking ball, to the White House and then also to democratic institutions that we hold dear. He recently bragged in the media, people, you can fact check me, that he, quote, took the freedom of speech away, which is something that is protected in our foundational documents related to our country, including the U.S. Constitution. To that, I wanted to say, Mr. President, please read the U.S. Constitution. And then also to the wrecking ball to the White House, he's on tape saying he will not do anything to the White House that could negatively impact it as he adds his ballroom. And he's doing the opposite. So I'm just wondering, I have so many questions. A, are you annoyed? B, also, what do you think it's going to take for people to believe that Trump is doing one thing and saying another thing, even though he's on tape doing that? Like, how do we talk about what's actually happening in America right now? I'm going to just start with those two things. Are you annoyed? And how do we talk about what's happening in America right now when we have Donald Trump doing one thing and saying the opposite?
Well, I am more than annoyed. I'm appalled. And I gotta say, at first when I heard about it, I was like, is this a big deal? And then I saw the photos, and the photos of the East Wing of the White House being destroyed are so shocking and just appalling as an American to see that happening to this incredible historical building that has been such a treasure for our nation. And I have to say also, you know, having lived abroad and gone to all these palaces in the around the country and seeing the grandeur of like what kings would produce, I always was very proud that our White House is comparatively very humble. It's like the house of the people. It was built not with like huge amounts of wealth to show like golden ballrooms. It was really like a place that was the people's place where, you know, every day people could come. And to destroy that, to try to remake it in the vision of these gold ballrooms of palaces around the world is such an assault to, I think, who we are as Americans and our history. And I think it's just, you know, a example in real life of what Trump is doing to our, you know, American values.
I mean, it's appalling. And when you talk about an example, I looked at the White House pictures, and you all, if you have not looked at the pictures, Google White House demolition or White House, just Google the word White House, and I'm sure these awful pictures will come up. And when I looked at them, I thought, oh my gosh, this picture of the demolition, just the raw demolition, it is not pretty, you all, of the People's House is such a good example of what's happening with healthcare. 17 million people were just pushed off of Medicaid because of Trump's ridiculous big bad bill of terribleness. And right now the government shutdown is happening because Trump and Republicans want to push 24 million people's health insurance premiums up by as much as 70% in the Affordable Care Act. It's awful. So in other words, a wrecking ball is being taken to our healthcare. A wrecking ball is being taken to our U.S. Constitution, as we have a president who's bragging about getting rid of the freedom of speech. A wrecking ball is being taken to many of our democratic institutions, as we have U.S. House of Representatives who won't come back from being on quote recess and actually sign in a new member of Congress as they're avoiding the Epstein file situation, for lack of a better word. You know, I mean, I could go on for like a really long time about the wrecking balls, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that as the image of the literal wreckage of the White House for what's happening with many of the policies, many of the programs that Republicans, Democrats, independents, libertarians, people of all political parties utilize to build good lives. Like the programs that are under threat and our rights that are under threat, they're not just under threat from Democrats. Republicans are equally under threat around the country because of this wrecking ball. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I've heard from people from different places around the country that, that there's so much news and there's so much chaos happening that a lot of people had turned off to the news. But like, this is the image that has really galvanized a lot of people to understand that Trump is not someone we can trust. I mean, he clearly said that he was not going to destroy the White House, and yet here we see these pictures of the demolition of the East Wing. And I think that has focused people's minds who are not normally focused on the news about, wait a minute, this guy is really not trustworthy. And I think that's important. And there are so many shocking ways that Trump is trying to remake history. I mean, one of the things that I've seen going past the news in all the chaos and, craziness that you can't even understand what's happening on, is that he's having a whole review of the Smithsonian museums because he thinks that, we're too tough on slavery in the museums. I mean, the whole thing, the remaking of history, the remaking of, oh, we're not destroying our healthcare, we're just like trying to make something better when they have absolutely zero healthcare plan as an alternative. Like the destruction without any construction, is, except for this horrendous gilded ballroom that will be for his, highest bidder, contributors, not for the American people, is, it's so evident, I think, to people that aren't focused about what really is happening. So that's at least something.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And just for listeners, for viewers who are with us, the East Wing, traditionally under presidents who are Democrats and Republicans, has been a place for the people. There is the East Room there. There are traditionally big sort of events and speeches and panels in the East Room, and people who represent lots of different communities often come together in the East Room to share perspectives, to share views, to share in community. And it's not typically a place where big fundraisers happen. It's a place where people swap views and listen. And so it sounds like it's being knocked down in order to have billionaire buddies come together for even more fundraising with a lot of gold, not to have more sharing, listening, democracy. And Donna, do you want to share a little bit about what the East Wing has been used for too?
Well, I mean, I just think the White House in general has been, so important for our nation's history. And it used to be that you could actually, in the very beginning, you could just walk up to the White House and walk in, and it was like a very kind of humble, welcoming place for anyone to stop by. And that history has, incredibly changed with this White House that is incredibly exclusive.
Yeah. We have another place that I just want to lift up as a wrecking ball happening to our democracy, to our country, to the idea that our nation aspires to be a place of liberty and justice for all. We just had No Kings marches across the country. Estimates show more than 7 million people were engaged in that. And one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is that the only person who is allowed to wear a crown in the United States of America is Lady Liberty. So when it comes to liberty and justice for all, right now we've seen that as Donald Trump and Republican leaders in Congress have made extreme cuts that we've been talking about to healthcare, they made those extreme cuts not only to give their billionaire buddies tax breaks on their private jets and their mega yachts, they also made those extreme cuts to our healthcare to pay for over $170 billion, billion, in increased harassment of people, harassment of hardworking immigrants, human rights abuses, separations of families, and no due process in many instances. And we know that our country needs safe and secure borders and compassionate immigration policy. But what we don't need is cruelty, and we don't need cuts to healthcare. So in this moment, Donna, where a lot of these cuts are just being made to fuel human rights abuses, what is your take?
Well, I think you've said it well. I mean, I think it's important for people to remember that these attacks on communities are happening with our tax dollars, with our healthcare dollars, with our childcare dollars, with our public school dollars. There's been massive cuts for all of that to fund this incredible buildup of immigration enforcement funding, 170 $1 billion in the big ugly bill. It's an incredibly huge amount of money. I think the Child Care Development Fund, by comparison, is $12 billion. So we really need to call that out for our members of Congress, that this is our tax dollars, and this is not what we want our tax dollars being funded, spent on. And, these raids on our communities are, of course, horrifying for immigrant families. People are, not going to work, not sending kids to school. It's incredibly disruptive. But it's also impacting non-immigrant families. We saw in Chicago how US citizens were being detained by ICE. We've seen, we had a member who wrote to us who shared, she's a teacher, and she had ICE come in with a father of a child in her kindergarten class to collect her child, and the child was crying and begging the teacher to help her. And of course, that child is going to be scarred forever, but every child in that classroom and the teacher are going to be scarred forever. I mean, these kinds of trauma and terror are impacting our whole communities. And we also know that immigrants are so important to our economies, and 24% of our healthcare workers, healthcare is already getting expensive. What's going to happen when we don't have adequate numbers of workers to staff our home health and our hospitals? So it's having an incredibly bad impact on our communities, on our economies. And I think we need to be lifting this up to our leaders and continue to be standing up for immigrants in our communities. We all need to know our rights and to share that with our immigrant neighbors. There's great resources on the Moms Rising website and on places like the ACLU website. There's great policies that all schools should implement, which we have also on the Moms Rising website and through our partners at the National Education Association and the American Federation of Teachers. We all need to mobilize on a state, local, and federal level to really honor that immigrants are, the strength of our nation. I have an immigrant mom. I think many of us have immigrant roots. And as you said, the only person in America who should be wearing a crown is Lady Liberty. And so let's all stand in solidarity with her.
Thank you so much, Donna Norton. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for being on today. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break. Next up, what's happening with the Department of Education and all the defunding that's been happening there too. Welcome back to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Rao Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. We are joined by two fabulous guests today. Yes, we have a double duo of awesomeness. We have Peggy Kemp, who's Executive Director at the Division for Early Childhood of the Council for Exceptional Children, and Shamika Brown, who's a DEC board member and a fabulous parent. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Kristen.
I'm really excited that you're here. So Peggy, to start us off, what is DEC? What's the Division for Early Childhood?
The Division for Early Childhood, our long name, of the Council for Exceptional Children. We are a subdivision of the council, which serves professionals who work with children and families from birth until they graduate. And our Division for Early Childhood focuses on children from birth until age 8 and their families. And what do we do? I often say it's compare it to something like American Academy of Pediatrics. Sorry, I had to spit that out. Just really support resources, standards, pre-service standards, guidance, professional development, really supporting anyone who's trying to provide high quality services for kids and families. We also do a lot of advocacy and through policy on the Hill, as well as nationally and in states. We have a strong and ever-growing family voice. We're very committed to making sure that families are truly partners in the work and seen as partners in the work in anyone who is engaged with our work. So just a variety of things if you just think about any professional organization.
And Shamika, I'm so glad you're joining us. You have a double expertise here. You're both a board member and a parent. And in this time, we know that public policy, in particular public policy that allows kids to thrive, families to build good lives, people to contribute to their communities and their economy, is under direct attack and threat by the undermining, undercutting, literal cutting of policies at the US Capitol under Donald Trump and Republican leadership's direction. What is the feeling, both at DEC and with parents, about the cuts that are coming out of Washington, D.C. right now under the Republican leadership?
So, are you asking from the family point of view from me, or you want Peggy to go first with it? How did
you? Yeah.
I would say it is, fearful, it's challenging, and you're concerned because it seemed like as a parent, once you finally learn to navigate one part of the system, something else happens. But now to think that the possible whole system that we've been working so hard to understand and navigate for our children could possibly end is very disheartening and fear. And so, when you live in fear, then there comes guilt, and then you worry about what that looks like and who do you turn to, who do you trust? So it is a lot of mixed emotions that we have to ensure that our children get what they need.
100%. And it's children get what they need to thrive. Children get what they need to contribute to our communities. Children get what they need to be healthy. And how can that be under direct attack by Republican leaders and Donald Trump? I don't even know. The Grinch needs to visit with some coal. I don't even know what's happening. Peggy, what do you think is happening? And what policies do you see under threat the most?
Right. I think we join a lot of people in saying we're not sure what's happening. We are extremely concerned that we've seen the Office of Special Education programs especially eliminated for all intents and purposes. And so that means that our systems, our state level systems, no longer have any monitoring of adherence to the Individuals with Disability Education Act. And families no longer have protections where they could go to OSEP to say things aren't going well in the state that they're in. It destroys a lot of our professional development, our educator training programs. We lost over $6 million in educator training dollars, and some of those were really specific to things like deaf-blind and whole state systems, national technical assistance centers, parent engagement centers. And so you asked what's going on. What's going on is looking at 50 years of IDEA being turned around and being pushed back, almost those 50 years for those of us that have been in the system for a long time. Yeah, this kind of where we're at. What policies are pushing that? Again, right now, what we hear is that the intent is to close the Department of Education. I think we all know that. That is the intent. We also know there's some pushback. There's some legal pushback right now. So, we'll find out where that goes from here. The message that we receive is that the funds will be sent to the states, and the states will decide what they want their systems of education to look like. That really puts a lot of concern, especially again around training of personnel, professional development, high quality teachers, and folks that have been putting together complex system at the Department of Education Office of Special Education program for decades. Turning all of that work over to folks that don't necessarily understand the complexities and maybe aren't ready for it.
And not enough staffing for it. I mean, we
Not
all
enough.
know
Yes.
parents often experience large degrees of paperwork in order to get IEPs, in order to get technical assistance, in order to get children the opportunity to learn in the ways that children can learn. And we know that each person has a different brain. I'm like, hello, did we forget this? Lots of people are unique in their learning in ways that information can come in. In fact, I would say all of us are unique. I mean, hello. So when we have all of that changing, as you said, Shamika, it is really hard. Like, how do you get the learning opportunity for your child that works for your child? What are you hearing from other parents, Shamika?
Right now, I think it's very important to get in community and collaborate and connect. I think that's the biggest piece, which is also amazing why I enjoy being a part of the DEC, because there is a space in every state is there, but to actually find a community home where families can come and talk. I think that's the key, because they don't know. They don't know about, like you said, the pages, the IEPs. They're trusting systems, but if you don't go get educated, if you don't read books, if you don't review the IEP, then you're just agreeing to whatever is stated and not really learning. So it's important to get in communities, important to do research and educate. It's important to just truly understand and then be that voice. Because once you educate yourself, you can elevate your voice to help make a difference, to ensure that what we're seeing now won't continue to be an issue going forward.
Yeah, 100% agree. And the other thing that I feel like these policies, not only do I feel like, I know these policy changes by Republican leaders and Donald Trump aren't recognizing, is the reality of what it is to be a parent in America. The majority of families need 2 wage earners to make ends meet. That means that there is not the time to go to school and learn about all the new ways for 500 hours that you need to jump through to get your kid the resources and the educational opportunities that they need to thrive. I mean, who has time for that, right? And
Right.
so it's really hard because, as you said, I just think it's so important what you said, Shamika, about when you have policies changing, when you have a lot of different roadblocks put up, it takes so much time to get through all of that. In the meantime, you're trying to go to work, you're trying to parent your child, you're trying to somehow take care of yourself, trying to somehow eat nutritious foods. Like, all of these things need to happen at the same time. There is no time left. So a lot of what I also see is more red tape, and that makes me mad too. It makes me mad when we cut actual staff, administrative staff. Some people are like, administrative staff, administrative staff. I just made up that word. That is not me. I am not administrative staff, administrative staff. Try that 5 times fast, because those staff people can help light the path forward and help raise the burden for parents who are doing the right thing while working and doing everything else. And so I'm mad about that too. I'm mad about the loss of administrative staff. And we've seen that, you all. Look at the headlines. Massive cuts have already happened to the Department of Education, to the support staff. And that's a big deal. Peggy, what are you seeing in terms of the cuts to support staff and the impact?
Well, as you said, when we cut administration, when we cut it at the federal level, the state level, it doesn't matter. We increase the burden on educators. We increase the burden on take administrators at local and the state level. And so that really was that layer of taking some of that off of them so that they can be more present for families, for actually teaching the children in front of them. And, the thing about, I've been, in the personal prep business for a lot of years. But the thing about it is the more trained, the more qualified the educators are, the more that paperwork burden, that making sure your rights are covered really happens, because that person standing before you knows what should and could happen for families. I speak also from a family point of view. Been a mom for 40 years of a young man who got services and grandchildren now. And I will tell you that, a lot of people don't think professional development, personnel preparation, high quality personal preparation matters, but it does. When my children and grandchildren have stood in front of someone appropriately trained, in a professional association where they understand what the ethics of this work is, what the heart of this work is, then they get the services that they need. When they don't, it's a pretty big uphill battle for the professional and the family and the child. So I think that that's our driving force. Most of the people in this profession have a heart for the work, but they need support, they need resources, they need the leadership and the administration to do that work. Especially in early childhood, and we set the trajectory for these little ones, right? If we really believe that brain activity the first 3 years of life is critical, the first 5 years of life is critical, then it's especially critical for children who experience delays or disabilities, that they have high quality folks standing in front of them. So that's really where we're at. And the fear that our quality teachers, our quality educators will be overburdened and not be able to support the children in the way that they want to.
100%.
Yeah.
Shamika, I love what Peggy just brought up about the positive outcomes that do happen when kids have access to the resources they need. Can you share a little bit about some positive outcomes that you've seen around you because kids had access?
Well, yeah, I could, there's a lot. So when kids have access, right, that family that feel like, okay, well, my brother didn't talk to over 3, but then when they get go to a preschool screening and then they meet and find out there is a program, then they go through early intervention, right? And then when it's time to go to school, they're transitioned over. So I've seen, and personally as a mom, a son who was not diagnosed with anything until he was in kindergarten during the pandemic, and I had to advocate and go through all the means. But now 5th grade, regular classroom, not in the classroom only, speech, able to navigate, learning social emotional, able to navigate what he needs. But I believe if we don't get into systems and learn our communities and trust the systems, then we won't see it. I feel that the key for a lot of families is if my first encounter with you is peaceful and it works and I can trust you, then I can build that relationship. But if I don't trust the system, I'm going to listen to you, but I'm going to follow and do what I think. So I think it's key. But I've seen families receive services, families get jobs, families become advocates and get in the school system. It takes the community and collaboration. And once the family's okay, the child will be okay because the system will be together.
And the community will be okay. I mean, kids
Exactly.
with all different learning experiences, learning differences have so much to contribute to our community. There's so much positives that can come out of unique perspectives. And hello, we need some unique perspectives on new solutions. Look at the front pages. So making sure we have an opportunity for everybody to learn, live, and thrive is critical. Everybody, call your member of Congress. Tell them to stop the cuts to the Department of Education and make sure everybody has access to education no matter where they are or live. Thank you so much for being on, Shamika, and Peggy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting us.
Well, that's it for our show today. Thanks so much for tuning in as we tackle the top topics facing our nation in a way that requires the most boring disclaimer on the history of the planet Earth. Here goes. Views expressed on this show are those of the individual speakers and should not be attributed to Moms Rising, to this station, or to any news or social media service that may disseminate a recording of this show to the public or to any segment of the public. Boom! We'll catch you next week.